that never closed down, from New York to Rio and old London town.
As Sri Lanka suffers its worst ever economic crisis, waves of protests and mass uprising involving all sectors of the society, including students and teachers, have sent shock waves through the government and thrown the country into a deep political crisis. The entire Sri Lankan cabinet resigned on Monday, 4th April. On Tuesday, around 43 Sri Lankan parliamentarians left the ruling government coalition function as independent MPs, leaving the government without a majority in parliament. Previously, in the 225-member Sri Lankan parliament, the government and team had 146 majority. After the walkout, it was left with 104 members. Central Bank of Sri Lanka Governor Ajit Cabral, also seen as responsible for the economic crisis, quit amid a deepening political crisis. Academic activities have been interrupted at several universities as lecturers and students boycotted classes and joined people from political parties, civil society organizations, and other young people and their parents in island-wide protests where the chanted message was "Go home, Gota," a call for President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to step down and end what is regarded as a corrupt political system in the country. Colombo 29th April Newswire reported that the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, CBSL, has requested donations from Sri Lankans residing overseas and well-wishers for any nationality to address the current economic crisis in the country. Issuing a notice, the CBSL said Sri Lankans are currently facing social, economic and financial hardships due to the country's depleted foreign reserves, resulting in significant difficulties in meeting the daily needs of essential medication, fuel and food. The bank assured that all foreign currency donations under this pledge would be utilized only to import essential items such as medicine, fuel, and food. CBSL added that the governor of the CBSL has appointed a committee consisting of 3 senior bank officers to ensure the transparency of the receipts and the utilization of donations. Further information through email ftacc@cbsl.lk or sending a message to WhatsApp number 9476831578 Mr. Rajapaksa is confident of bouncing back even if sacked. Don't be afraid, I will not resign. Colombo, April 28, Daily Mirror. The Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa is presently facing one of the toughest challenges in his political career, with certain sections of the population calling on him to step down from the present crisis. In an exclusive interview with Daily Mirror, Mahinda Rajapaksa has urged people to be patient, stating it was not practical for him and the president to resign because they had been elected through a mandate. He further said there was no split between the two brothers and they were resolving the issues to restore normalcy soon. We have a mandate, and if people want to change us, they can do it through an election. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa reaffirmed that he would not resign from the post of Prime Minister. He also spoke at a discussion with ministers and members of the provincial councils at the Temple Tree today. The Provincial Councillors Forum unanimously passed a resolution at the discussion that the Prime Minister and the government do not require to step down. Members of the forum stressed that it is essential for Prime Minister Rajapaksa to continue in his post to resolve the current economic crisis in the country. Colombo is completely paralyzed as mass-scale protests begin. Thousands of demonstrators have hit the streets since April 9th, clamoring for the removal of the Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, blaming him for the gross mismanagement of the economy. Moise Mustafa reports in Around South Asia, Sri Lanka, reported that the city of Colombo is said to be wholly paralyzed as many industries, ranging from plantations, agriculture, power, fisheries, banking, health, sports, economic centers, teachers, and principals are among those that have joined the island-wide strike. According to reports, approximately 1,000 trade unions have pledged support for the strike action. Sydney Sri Lankan expatriates gathered at Martin Place in Sydney to protest against corruption in Sri Lanka and demand the Sri Lankan government to resign. This protest was organized to support our outstanding youth at the Goldfish. Similar demonstrations have been held in many countries supporting the demonstrators in their mother country. How far these demonstrations will impact the President Gotabaya and the Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa resign with shouts of Gotabaya go home will have on the solidarity movement's impact is yet to be seen. President Rajapaksa agrees to form an all-party government, reported by Taraka Saman on 27th April for Ceylon Today. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has agreed to form an all-party government in principle. Sri Lanka's embattled President Gotabaya Rajapaksa Wednesday convened a meeting of political parties on April 29th to discuss the possible formation of an all-party government to end the protracted political impasse in the country amidst mounting pressure on Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa to resign and make way for an interim government. According to a statement, a letter to all party leaders in the ruling coalition said the government was in agreement to form an all-party government comprising parties represented in Parliament. The meeting was fixed yesterday to discuss the new arrangements after Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa's resignation. This comes in the background of pressure mounted within the ruling coalition on the Prime Minister to resign to make way to an interim government. Poverty in Sri Lanka to spike this year, warns World Bank. More Sri Lankans will slip into poverty this year, the World Bank has warned. It urges the debt-ridden island nation to undertake urgent policy measures to address the high levels of debt, trim the fiscal deficit, and mitigate the adverse impacts on the poor and vulnerable. Sri Lanka is currently in the throes of unprecedented economic turmoil since its independence from Britain in 1948. The crisis is caused in part by a lack of foreign currency, which has meant that the country cannot afford to pay for imports of staple foods and fuel, leading to an acute shortages of and very high prices. Around 11.7% of people in Sri Lanka earn less than $3.20 per day, the international poverty line for lower middle income countries, up from 9.2% in 2019, the bank said in its spring update on South Asian region. The other reason for the increase in poverty rates in the country was that the government's Samudri program, which covers around 1.2 million low-income families, remained inadequate. Further, due to pandemic, the Sri Lankan economy has contracted by 3.6% in 2020. The World Bank's April 2022 update of macro poverty outlook for Sri Lanka asserted that the heightened fiscal and external risks and the challenging political situation pose significant uncertainty to the economic outlook. The country faces an external financing gap in 2022 and beyond. The necessary adjustments may adversely affect growth and impact poverty initially. Still, it will correct the significant imbalances, subsequently providing the foundation for more robust and sustainable growth and access to international financial markets. Last week, the World Bank readied a $10 million package to Sri Lanka to purchase medicine and other essentials. Sri Lanka needs at least $4 billion to tide over its mounting economic woes, and talks with international institutions such as the World Bank and the countries like China and Japan for financial assistance have been going on. India has agreed to extend an additional 500 million credit line to help Sri Lanka import fuel. India has already agreed to defer 1.5 billion in import payments Sri Lanka needs to make to the Asian Clearing Union. Last week, the Sri Lankan government said it would temporarily default on $35.5 billion in foreign debt as the pandemic and the war in Ukraine made it impossible to make payments to overseas creditors. As things go, forming an all-party government with solidarity may be the immediate solution to solve the political crisis in Sri Lanka. Only such a party can impeach President Gotabaya, and whether that would materialize is yet to be seen. Sri Lanka faces medical emergency as economic crisis hits the drug supplies. Union warns of a complete breakdown of the health system with hospitals all running out of medicine. Sri Lanka's financial situation has deteriorated into a medical problem, with the top medical union declaring a national health emergency over a life-threatening shortage of drugs. On Tuesday, the country's most powerful trade union, the Government Medical Officers Association (GMOA), called a meeting and declared a medical crisis as doctors and hospitals reported a widespread lack of medicine. Sri Lanka's lack of foreign currency reserves has had a devastating impact on medicine availability. More than 85% of the pharmaceutical products in the country are imported and paid for in US dollars. If dollars are not available, then drugs cannot be bought. The Sri Lanka Chamber of Pharmaceutical Industry warned last month that 5% of prescriptions were out of stock and the problem was likely to worsen. Long lunch for Sri Lanka. On Anzac Day, an all-star team of Sri Lankan chefs organised a lunch to support Sri Lanka held in Darling Harbour, Sydney. The Long Lunch for Lanka was organised by 6 Sri Lankan restaurants: Colombo Social in Enmore, Dish Sri Lankan Street Foods in Glebe, Indu Sydney CBD, Lankan Filling Station Darlinghurst, Sri Lankan Bites Glebe and Fold Dulwich Hill, and the venue was Plate It Forward. It was a great success and over $20,000 were collected to send the needy institutions in Sri Lanka. Without wasting time and energy on demonstrations, we appreciate the gestures shown by these master chefs. We congratulate them. We will present the new developments in the present crisis as it happens. Stay safe and goodbye for now.
And how wide I roam, I still call Sri Lanka home.